The Roman province of Africa Proconsularis was established after the Romans defeated Carthage in the Third Punic War. It roughly comprised the territory of present-day Tunisia, the northeast of modern-day Algeria, and the small Mediterranean seacoast of modern-day western Libya along the Syrtis Minor. It was one of the wealthiest provinces in the western part of the empire, second only to Italia.The Arabs later named roughly the same region as the original province Ifriqiya, a rendering of Africa from the Latin language. History. The acquired for the province of Africa was the site of the ancient city of Carthage. Other large cities in the region included Hadramautum, capital of Byzacena, Hippo Regius. The province was established by the Roman Republic in 146 BC, following the Third Punic War. Rome established its first African colony, Africa Proconsularis or Africa Vetus, governed by a proconsul, in the most fertile part of what was formerly Carthaginian territory. Utica was formed as the administrative capital. The remaining territory was left in the domain of the Numidian client king Massinissa. At this time, the Roman policy in Africa was simply to prevent another great power from rising on the far side of Sicily. In 118 BC, the Numidian prince Jugurtha attempted to reunify the smaller kingdoms. However, upon his death, much of Jugurtha's territory was placed in the control of the Mauritanian client king Bocchus, and by that time, the Romanization of Africa was firmly rooted. In 27 BC, when the Republic had transformed into an empire, the province of Africa began its imperial occupation under Roman rule. Several political and provincial reforms were implemented by Augustus and later by Caligula, but Claudius finalized the territorial divisions into official Roman provinces. Africa was a senatorial province. After Diocletian's administrative reforms, it was split into Africa Zeugatana in the north and Africa Byzacena in the south, both of which were part of the Diocese Africae. The region remained a part of the Roman Empire until the Germanic migrations of the 5th century. The Vandals crossed into North Africa from Spain in 429 and overran the area by 439 and founded their own kingdom, including Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia and the Balearics. The Vandals controlled the country as a warrior elite. They also persecuted Catholicism, as the Vandals were adherents of Arianism. Towards the end of the 5th century, the Vandal state fell into decline, abandoning most of the interior territories to the Maori and other Berber tribes of the desert. In AD 533, Emperor Justinian, using a Vandal dynastic dispute as pretext, sent an army under the general Belisarius to recover Africa. In a short campaign, Belisarius defeated the Vandals, entered Carthage in triumph and re-established Roman rule over the province. The restored Roman administration was successful in fending off the attacks of the Amazigh desert tribes, and by means of an extensive fortification network managed to extend its rule once again to the interior. The North African provinces, together with the Roman possessions in Spain, were grouped into the Exarchate of Africa by Emperor Maurice. The Exarchate prospered, and from it resulted the overthrow of the Emperor Phocas by Heraclius in 610. Heraclius briefly considered moving the imperial capital from Constantinople to Carthage. After 640, the Exarchate managed to stave off the Muslim conquest, but in 698, a Muslim army from Egypt sacked Carthage and conquered the Exarchate, ending Roman and Christian rule in North Africa. Timetable legend. Roman Africans. The African province was amongst the wealthiest regions in the empire, and as a consequence people from all over the empire migrated into the Roman Africa Province. Most importantly, veterans in early retirement who settled in Africa on farming plots promised for the military service. Historian Theodore Mommsen estimated that under Hadrian nearly one-third of the eastern Numidia population was descended from Roman veterans. Even so, the Roman military presence of North Africa was relatively small, consisting of about 28,000 troops and auxiliaries in Numidia and the two Mauritanian provinces. Starting in the 2nd century AD, these garrisons were manned mostly by local inhabitants. A sizable Latin-speaking population developed that was multinational in background, sharing the North African region with those speaking Punic and Berber languages. Imperial security forces began to be drawn from the local population, including the Berbers. Ibn Nasr, in his A History of the Maghreb, said that what made the Berbers accept the Roman way of life all the more readily was that the Romans, though a colonizing people who captured the lands by the might of their arms, did not display any racial exclusiveness and were remarkably tolerant of Berber religious cults, be they indigenous or borrowed from the Carthaginians. However, the Roman territory in Africa was unevenly penetrated by Roman culture. Pockets of non-Romanized Berbers continued to exist throughout the Roman period, even in such areas as eastern Tunisia and Numidia. By the end of the Western Roman Empire, nearly all of the Maghreb was fully Romanized. According to Mommsen in his The Provinces of the Roman Empire, and the Roman Africans enjoyed a high level of prosperity. This prosperity touched partially even the populations living outside the Roman limes, who were reached with Roman expeditions to sub-Saharan Africa. The willing acceptance of Roman citizenship by members of the ruling class in African cities produced such Roman Africans as the comic poet Terence, the rhetorician Fronto of Scytha, the jurist Salvius Julianus of Hadrumetum, the novelizer Apuleius of Madaros, the emperor Septimius Severus of Leptis Magna, the Christians Tertullian and Cyprian of Carthage, and Arnobius of Sicca and his pupil Lactantius, the angelic Dr. Augustine of Thagaste, the epigrammatist Luxorius of Vandal Carthage, and perhaps the biographer Suetonius, and the poet Dracontius. Economics. The prosperity of most towns depended on agriculture, called the granary of the empire. North Africa, according to one estimate, produced 1 million tons of cereals each year, 1/4 of which was exported. Additional crops included beans, figs, grapes, and other fruits. By the 2nd century, olive oil rivaled cereals as an export item. In addition to the cultivation of slaves, and the capture and transporting of exotic wild animals, the principal production and exports included the textiles, marble, wine, timber, livestock, pottery such as African red slip, and wool. The incorporation of colonial cities into the Roman Empire brought an unparalleled degree of urbanization to vast areas of territory, particularly in North Africa. This level of rapid urbanization had a structural impact on the town economy, and artisan production in Roman cities became closely tied to the agrarian spheres of production. As Rome's population grew, so did her demand for North African produce. This flourishing trade allowed the North African provinces to increase artisan production in rapidly developing cities, making them highly organized urban centers. Many Roman cities shared both consumer and producer model city aspects, as artisanal activity was directly related to the economic role cities played in long-distance trade networks. The urban population became increasingly engaged in the craft and service sectors and less in agrarian employment, until a significant portion of the town's vitality came from the sale or trade of products through middlemen to markets in areas both rural and abroad. The changes that occurred in the infrastructure for agricultural processing, like olive oil and wine production, As trade continued to develop, both cities and commerce directly influenced the volume of artisan production. The scale, quality, and demand for these products reached its acme in Roman North Africa. Pottery production. The North African provinces spanned across regions rich with olive plantations and potter's clay sources, which led to the early development of fine ancient Roman pottery, especially African red slip terra sigillata tableware and clay oil lamp manufacture. As a crucial industry, lamps provided the most common form of illumination in Rome. They were used for public and private lighting, as votive offerings in temples, lighting at festivals, and as grave goods. As the craft developed and increased in quality and craftsmanship, the North African creations began to rival their Italian and Grecian models and eventually surpassed them in merit and in demand. The innovative use of molds around the 1st century BCE allowed for a much greater variety of shapes and decorative style, and the skill of the lamp maker was demonstrated by the quality of the decoration found typically on the flat top of the lamp or discus, and the outer rim or shoulder. The production process took several stages. The decorative motifs were created using small individual molds, and were then added as applique to a plain archetype of the lamp. The embellished lamp was then used to make 2 plaster half molds, one lower half and one upper half mold, and multiple copies were then able to be mass-produced. Decorative motifs ranged according to the lamp's function and to popular taste. Ornate patterning of squares and circles were later added to the shoulder with a stylus, as well as palm trees, small fish, animals, and flower patterns. The discus was reserved for conventional scenes of gods, goddesses, mythological subjects, scenes from daily life, erotic scenes, and natural images. The strongly Christian identity of post-Roman society in North Africa is exemplified in the later instances of North African lamps, on which scenes of Christian images like saints, crosses, and biblical figures became commonly articulated topics. Traditional mythological symbols had enduring popularity as well, which can be traced back to North Africa's Punic heritage. Many of the early North African lamps that have been excavated, especially those of high quality, have the name of the manufacturer inscribed on the base, which gives evidence of a highly competitive and thriving local market that developed early and continued to influence and bolster the colonial economy. African terra sigillata. After a period of artisanal, political, and social decline in the 3rd century AD, lamp-making revived and accelerated artistry in the early Christian age to new heights. The introduction of fine local red-fired clays in the late 4th century triggered this revival. African red slipware, or African terra sigillata, revolutionized the pottery and lamp-making industry. ARS ware was produced from the last third of the 1st century AD onwards, and was of major importance in the mid to late Roman periods. Famous in antiquity as fine or high-quality tableware, it was distributed both regionally and throughout the Mediterranean basin along well-established and heavily trafficked trade routes. North Africa's economy flourished as its products were dispersed and demand for its products dramatically increased. Initially, the ARS lamp designs imitated the simple design of 3rd to 4th century courseware lamps, often with globules on the shoulder or with fluted walls, but new, more ornate designs appeared before the early 5th century as demand spurred on the creative process. The development and widespread distribution of ARS finewares marks the most distinctive phase of North African pottery making. These characteristic pottery lamps were produced in large quantities by efficiently organized production centers with large-scale manufacturing abilities, and can be attributed to specific pottery-making centers in northern and central Tunisia by way of modern chemical analysis, which allows modern archaeologists to trace distribution patterns among trade routes both regional and across the Mediterranean. Some major Ars centers in central Tunisia are Sidi Marzouk Tunsi, Henshir El Galal, and Henshir Es Srira, all of which have Ars lamp artifacts attributed to them by the microscopic chemical makeup of the clay fabric as well as macroscopic style prevalent in that region. This underscores the idea that these local markets fueled the economy of not only the town itself, but the entire region and supported markets abroad. Certain vessel forms, fabrics, and decorative techniques like rouletting, applique, and stamped d'eacute are specific for a certain region and even for a certain pottery center. If neither form nor decoration of the material to be classified as identifiable, it is possible to trace its origins, not just to a certain region but even to its place of production by comparing its chemical analysis to important northeastern and central Tunisian potteries with good representatives, governors of Roman Africa, Republican era, unless otherwise noted, names of governors in Africa and the dates are taken from T.R.S. Broughton, The Magistrates of the Roman Republic, Volume 1 and Volume 2, 146-100 BC. Inscriptional evidence is less common for this period than for the imperial era, and names of those who held a provincia are usually recorded by historians only during wartime or by the triumphal fasti. After the defeat of Carthage in 146 BC, no further assignments to Africa among the senior magistrates or pro-magistrates are recorded until the Jugurthine War, when the command against Jugurtha in Numidia became a consular province. P. Cornelius Scipio Africanus Aemilianus. L. Calpurnius Bestia. S.P. Postumius Albanus. Q. Caius Lius Metellus Numidicus. C. Marius. L. Cornelius Sulla 90s-31 BC. During the civil wars of the 80s and 40s BC, legitimate governors are difficult to distinguish from purely military commands, as rival factions were vying for control of the province by means of force. None known with reasonable certainty for the 90s. P. Sextilius. Q. Caius Lius Metellus Pius. C. Fabius Hadrianus. G. N. Pompeius Magnus. L. Licinius Lucullus. A. Manlius Torquatus. L. Sergius Catilina. Q. Pompeius Rufus. T. Vettius Cognum and possibly Sabinus. Q. Valerius Orca. P. Attis Varus. C. Considius Longus. L. Aelius Tubero. P. Attis Varus. Q. Caius Lius Metellus Pius Scipio Nasica. M. Porcius Cato. C. Caninius Rebilius. C. Calvisius Sabinus. C. Seleucius Crispus. The historian usually known in English as Sallust. Q. Cornificius. T. Sextius. C. Fuficius Fango. M. Aemilius Lepidus. T. Statilius Taurus. L. Cornificius. Imperial era. Principate reign of Augustus Lucius Autronius Petus. Marcus Acilius Glabrio. Lucius Sempronius Atratinus. Lucius Cornelius Balbus. Gaius Sentius Saturninus. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. Publius Quinctilius Varus Aprox. Lucius Partianus Rufus Aprox. Cossus Cornelius Lentulus Gatulicus. Lucius Caninius Gallus. Lucius Nonius Aspranus. Reign of Tiberius Lucius Aelius Lamia. Marcus Furius Camillus. Lucius Apronius. Quintus Junius Blasus. Publius Cornelius Dolabella. Gaius Fabius Marsus. Marcus Junius Silanus. Gaius Rubellius Blandus. Servius Cornelius Cethegus. Reign of Gaius Caligula Lucius Calpurnius Piso. Lucius Salvius Otho. Reign of Claudius Quintus Marcius Barius Orinus. Servius Sulpicius Galba. Marcus Servilius Nonianus. Titus Statilius Taurus IV. Marcus Pompeius Silvanus Tiberius Flavianus. Reign of Nero. Quintus Sulpicius Camerinus Petricus, Gnaeus Hosidius Geta, Quintus Curtius Rufus, Aulus Vitellius, Lucius Vitellius, Servius Cornelius Scipio Salvidianus Orphatus, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, Gaius Vipstanus Apronianus. Reign of Vespasian. Lucius Calpurnius Piso, Lucius Junius Quintus Vibius Crispus, Quintus Manlius Ancharius Tarquitius Saturninus, Quintus Julius Cordinus Gaius Rutilius Gallicus, Gaius Paxius Africanus, Publius Galerius Traculus. Reign of Domitian. Lucius Nonius Calpurnius Aspranus, Sextius Vetilianus Ceriolus, Gnaeus Domitius Lucanus, Gnaeus Domitius Tullus, Lucius Funiciulanus Vetonianus, Aspranus. Reign of Nova Marius Priscus. Reign of Trajan. Gaius Cornelius Gallicanus, Gaius Octavius Didius Tossianus, Lucius Arvolianus Priscus, Lucius Cornelius Pusioanius Messala, Quintus Peducaeus Procinus, Gaius Cornelius Rarus Sextius Naso, Quintus Pomponius Rufus, Gaius Pomponius Rufus Acilius Priscus Caelius Sparsus, Aulus Caecilius Faustinus, Gaius Julius Plancus Varus Cornutus Tertullus. Reign of Hadrian. Lucius Rocius Aelianus Maecius Sulla, Marcus Vitorius Marcellus, Lucius Minucius Natalis, Lucius Catilius Severus Julianus Claudius Reginus, Lucius Tertinius Noricus, Marcus Pompeius Macrianus, Tiberius Julius Secundus, Gaius Armedius Quadratus Sertorius Severus, Gaius Bratius Presens, Lucius Fulvius Rusticus, Catus P. Valerius Priscus, Lucius Vitrucius Flaminianus, Titus Salvius Rufinus Minucius Opimianus. Reign of Antoninus Pius. Titus Salvius Rufinus Minucius Opimianus, Manius Acilius Glabrio, Titus Pryfernius Petus Rosianus Geminus, Sextus Julius Major, Publius Tullius Varro, Lucius Minucius Natalis Quadronius Verus, Lucius Hedius Rufus Lollianus Avitus. Reign of Marcus Aurelius Sextus Cocceius Severianus, Servius Cornelius Scipio Salvidianus Orphatus, Marcus Antonius Zeno, Titus Sextius Latrinus. Reign of Commodus Gaius Vettius Sabinianus Julius Hospes. Reign of Septimius Severus Publius Cornelius Anullinus, Pollianus Auspex, Marcus Claudius Macrinius Vindex Hermogenianus, Sextus Cocceius Fabianus, Singius Severus, Lucius Cossonius Aegius Marallus, Marcus Ulpius Arabianus, Gaius Julius Asper, Marcus Umbrius Primus, Minucius Opimianus, Rufinus, Marcus Valerius Bradua Mauricus, Titus Flavius Decimus, Gaius Valerius Pudens. Reign of Caracalla. Publius Julius Capilla Tertullus Priscus, Appius Claudius Julianus, Gaius Caesonius Macer Ruffinianus, Marius Maximus. Reign of Elagabalus. Lucius Marius Perpetuus, Lucius Cassius Dio Cocceianus. Reign of Alexander Severus. Gaius Octavius Appius Suetrius Sabinus. Reign of Maximinus Thrax. Marcus Antonius Gordianus Sempronianus Romanus Africanus. Reign of Gordian III Sabinianus, Lucius Caesonius Lucilius Macer Ruffinianus. Reigns of Valerian and Gallienus Aspasius Paternus, Galerius Maximus, Lucius Messius, Vibius Partianus, Lucius Naevius Aquilinus, Sextus Cocceius Anicius Faustus. Reign of Aurelian Firmus, Lucius Caesonius Ovinius Manlius Ruffinianus Bassus. Reign of Carinus Gaius Julius Paulinus. Later Empire. Governors are directly chosen by the emperors, without Roman Senate approval. Titus Claudius Aurelius Aristobulus, Cassius Dio, Titus Flavius Postumius Titianus, Lucius Aelius Helvius Dionysius, Aelianus, possibly Amnius Anicius Julianus, Gaius Annius Anullinus, Gaius Caionius Ruffius Volutinus, Petronius Probianus, Iconius Catulinus, Cesius Largus Maternianus, Quintus Flavius Mesius Ignatius Lollianus, Antonius Marcellinus, Aurelius Celsianus Fabius Iconius Catulinus Philomathius, Proculus, Lucius Flavianus, Sextus Claudius Petronius Probus, Proclanus, Quintus Claudius Hermogenianus Olybrius, Claudius Octavianus, P. Ampelius, Claudius Hermogenianus Caesarius, Julius Festus Hymatius, Petronius Claudius, Sextius Rusticus Julianus, Quintus Aurelius Symmachus, Paulus Constantius, Chilo, Decimus Hilarianus Hesprius, Thalassius, Flavius Afranius Syagrius, Helvius Vindicianus, Heresius, Virius Audentius Aemilianus, Flavius Eusenius, Messianus, Felix Junius Polemius, Latinus Pacatus Drepanius, Flavius Rhodanus Primus, Aemilius Florus Paternus, Flacianus, Marcianus, Flavius Herodes, Anodius, Theodorus, Anicius Probanus, Serranus, Victorinus, Apollodorus, Gabinius Barbarus Pompeianus, Helpidius, Septimanus, Ruffius Antonius Agrippnius Volutinus, Flavius Pionius Diatomus, C. Aelius Pompeius Porphyrius Proculus, Donatus, Macrobius Palladius, Apringius, Eucrius, Q. Sentius Fabricius Aelianus, Aurelius Anicius Symmachus. Episcopal sees. Ancient episcopal sees of Proconsular Africa listed in the Annuario Pontifico as titular sees.